Ryan's Office Revenge. I knew something was wrong when they removed my name from the weekly operations meeting without telling me. Just a blank space where Russell Patterson's logistics updates used to be. No email, no heads up, nothing. I found out when I dialed into the call and heard some kid walking through my supply chain reports like he'd written them himself. My name is Russell Patterson, 48 years old, and I'd been running government contract operations for 18 years. Built the whole department from scratch after my Navy Reserve service ended. What happened next taught me that sometimes the best revenge is just knowing how to read the fine print. The silence on that call lasted maybe 6 seconds before I muted my mic and just watched. Cold, surgical, like someone pulling a chair out from under you and calling it restructuring. But that wasn't the first warning sign. The real one came a week earlier, a sticky note on my monitor from Kevin Park, junior HR guy who still believed the company handbook actually meant something. FYI, payroll says your contract's ancient, like really old, not in their system anymore. K. I laughed at the time, tossed it in my desk drawer with the paper clips and old business cards. We'd been through 2 mergers, an acquisition, and 1 reorganization that felt more like corporate theater than actual strategy. The fact that my original contract was still in some manila folder somewhere seemed fitting. I'd outlasted the building's HVAC system and most of the senior management. Before we go further, let me tell you why this matters. If you're listening to this and you're over 45, working for some company that suddenly discovered agile methodology and digital transformation, pay attention. They're coming for you next. The only question is whether you'll be ready. I'd always been the reliable one. Not flashy, not the guy doing PowerPoint presentations with fancy animations, just the one who kept the government contracts flowing, managed vendor relationships that took decades to build, handled crisis situations that would make younger managers panic. When Hurricane Maria knocked out our main electronics supplier in Puerto Rico back in 2017, I had backup vendors operational within 8 hours. Nobody else in the company even knew those relationships existed. My Navy background taught me redundancy planning. You don't just have Plan A, you have Plans B through F, all mapped out and ready to execute. That's how we maintained 99.7% contract compliance for Defense Logistics Agency procurements over 18 years. When other companies were getting blacklisted for delivery failures, we were getting sole source contract renewals. The defense contracts weren't just paperwork to me. These were boots, body armor, communication equipment heading to bases where my old shipmates' kids were stationed. Every delayed shipment could mean someone's son or daughter going without critical gear. I took that seriously. The 26-year-old MBA graduates they were hiring now saw numbers on spreadsheets. I didn't complain when they froze raises for strategic investment. Didn't raise hell when they changed my title from Senior Operations Manager to Supply Chain Optimization Lead, which was just corporate word salad for do more work for the same pay. I'd been through worse. Try explaining to a chief petty officer why the supply manifest doesn't match the actual cargo. That teaches you patience. Then came Brandon Wells. 28 years old, Stanford MBA, jawline sharp enough to cut glass, and the humility of a caffeinated 5-year-old. He'd been there maybe 6 weeks when he announced during a department meeting that legacy team members should start documenting their processes for knowledge transfer initiatives. Translation: we want to download your brain before we throw you out like outdated software. I smiled, nodded, and wrote absolutely nothing down. Instead, I started remembering things, like that weird clause I'd negotiated back in 2006 during this big veteran hiring push after 9/11. The company was desperate for people who understood military procurement processes. I'd insisted on a line buried in the termination section that HR barely read. Should the employee be dismissed without demonstrable cause following 10+ years of satisfactory service, structured severance review must be initiated with escalating financial penalties for procedural non-compliance. Most folks had moved to newer digital contracts by now. Cleaner, standardized, sanitized. Mine was still analog, still valid, and still very useful. Like keeping your old field manual when everyone else switched to tablets. Brandon didn't bother pretending to value institutional knowledge. He called it process debt. Said things like, "We need velocity, not nostalgia," while sipping matcha and scheduling meditation breaks on the team calendar. Every one-on-one meeting with him turned into a lecture about adaptive mindsets and embracing change. I once tried to explain why our relationship with Textron Systems was critical for our armored vehicle component contracts. 20-year partnership. Personally knew their procurement director from my active duty days. Brandon redirected me to a TED Talk about failure as a teacher. I redirected myself to Google and started researching employment law. It was subtle at first. Meetings got rescheduled without notice. Projects I'd managed for years suddenly had collaborative leadership, which meant some 26-year-old named Jennifer Mills was now taking point. Jennifer, whose biggest achievement until that moment was syncing Slack to her Apple Watch, was suddenly presenting roadmaps I'd written word for word. The Raytheon integration project that took me 8 months to negotiate? Jennifer's name was on it now. The emergency procurement protocol I'd developed after the 2018 tornado hit our Kansas supplier? Suddenly, it was her innovative crisis management framework. Even my parking spot got moved, like a quiet little insult, delivered every Tuesday morning. Every time I asked Michelle Torres from HR for clarification, she smiled like I was asking for a unicorn. So I did what any middle-aged, undervalued operations veteran would do. I pulled out that manila folder with my original ink-signed contract and started reading. Not skimming. Reading like my career depended on it. Because it did. It happened on a Tuesday. Always a Tuesday. I logged into our weekly alignment call, expecting to give updates on the defense contract renewals, only to see Jennifer Mills screen-sharing a timeline I'd created 3 quarters ago. She stumbled through acronyms I'd coined, explaining processes she'd never seen implemented, regurgitating my work like she'd discovered sliced bread. The General Dynamics contract modification that I'd negotiated personally with their program manager? Jennifer was presenting it like her brainchild. She couldn't even pronounce DFR's compliance correctly. But there she was, taking credit for 6 months of my late nights working through federal acquisition regulations. I scanned the participant panel. Brandon leaned back in his little video square, arms folded like a smug eagle. Michelle Torres avoided eye contact, suddenly fascinated by her coffee mug. I unmuted. Quick clarification. I wasn't aware there'd been a leadership transition on the defense contracts. Silence. Jennifer blinked like someone had unplugged her Wi-Fi. Brandon unmuted. We're just trying a fresh approach, Russell. Different perspectives. Jennifer's taking lead from here. No discussion, no warning. Just like that, I was cut out of relationships I'd built through 3 different defense secretaries, 2 base realignments, and 1 procurement crisis that nearly cost us $12 million in penalties. These weren't just business relationships. Colonel Martinez at Fort Bragg had served on the same destroyer I had. Commander Johnson at Norfolk Naval Base remembered when I'd personally driven replacement communication equipment through a blizzard to meet their deployment deadline. I didn't argue, muted myself, left the meeting, and sat staring at my reflection in the dark screen. For the first time in years, I felt it burning behind my eyes. I'd been bleeding for months, but was too loyal to notice. I pulled out the storage box from under my desk. Dusty, dented, stuffed with old HR documents, performance reviews, and notes from 18 years of institutional memory. I wasn't hoarding. I was documenting. Navy habits die hard. Always keep records. Always have backup systems. Found my contract right where I'd left it, sealed in plastic like a historical artifact. Reading through it was like finding intelligence on enemy positions. Most of it was standard corporate boilerplate, but there it was under Section 8B. In the event of employment termination without demonstrable cause, the company shall engage in structured severance review, enforceable under prevailing state and federal labor statutes. Still valid, still enforceable. Still mine. I didn't feel powerful. I felt insulted. Even if I won, it meant someone saw me as disposable as printer toner. The next morning, Michelle sent me a calendar invite. No context, just performance review, career development discussion. That's HR speak for let's plan your funeral without saying the word death. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I went back to my archived files from 2006 onboarding. Started highlighting, cross-referencing, taking notes like I was preparing for a security clearance review. HR had updated their templates in 2015, but legacy contracts like mine were grandfathered in. Buried under 15 pages of legal jargon was something beautiful. An arbitration clause with timelines, penalties, and teeth. I checked the current labor code online. Still enforceable. No expiration date. No loopholes. So I began cataloging. Quietly, systematically, like planning a military operation. Intelligence gathering phase. I scanned documents, downloaded org, charts, made backups. 3 copies, cloud storage, encrypted drive, and hard copies mailed to my home address. Old school redundancy. Meanwhile, the company moved forward like I'd already been erased. Brandon started ending meetings with "Thanks, team," without looking in my direction. I watched Jennifer butcher vendor negotiations, miss critical deadlines, and smile through it all with the confidence of someone who'd never seen a contract default. The Lockheed Martin parts order she screwed up? That delayed aircraft maintenance at 3 Air Force bases? The Boeing supplier meeting she botched? Nearly cost us preferred vendor status on a $40 million contract, but nobody connected these failures to losing institutional knowledge. They just blamed market volatility. My workload didn't decrease. They just stopped giving me credit. Projects I'd initiated suddenly had different names and new project leads. The emergency supply protocol I'd developed after the 2019 government shutdown, it was called Adaptive Resource Management Framework with Jennifer's signature on the documentation. But I didn't fight back. Not yet. I smiled, nodded, even offered to support the transition because I wasn't going to fight this battle in conference rooms. I was going to win it in the contract language. The coaching plan arrived via email. 3 pages of bureaucratic fiction that read like a breakup letter written by committee. Russell will demonstrate increased enthusiasm for collaborative innovation. What did that even mean? Was I supposed to throw confetti every time Brandon replaced experienced staff with his college networking contacts? The bullet points got worse. Often works independently without seeking team consensus. Right, because when a Navy destroyer needs critical parts, you don't form a committee. You execute the mission. Limited engagement in digital communication channels. Because I was busy keeping our supply chain from collapsing like a house of cards in a windstorm, they wanted me to sign it. I didn't. Just took a copy and walked out of Michelle's office with the calm of someone who already knew the ending. Back at my desk, I did what I always do when things feel rigged. I documented everything. Yellow highlighter went over every line of the coaching plan. I printed Zoom meeting logs proving punctual attendance. I pulled backup emails showing project approvals they were now pretending never happened. Then I made a phone call. Patricia Cohen, employment attorney, a woman whose voice could freeze lava and whose standard expression could curdle milk. We'd met 12 years ago after a different company tried similar games. Back then, I didn't have leverage. This time, I had a contract, a clause, and a paper trail clean enough to pass federal audit. "Need you to review Section 8B arbitration windows," I texted her. "Sending documentation packet today." Her response came within minutes. "Received. This should be interesting." That night I opened a bottle of bourbon. I'd been saving since my daughter graduated college. I wasn't celebrating yet, but there was something quietly satisfying about being ahead of the game for once. I'd been blindsided before: sudden layoffs, gaslighting managers, entire departments dissolved over lunch. This time, I wasn't operating in the dark. HR kept sending passive-aggressive emails. Friendly reminder that collaboration is a core company value. Let's work together to avoid unnecessary escalations. You'd think I'd sent a severed horse head to Brandon's office instead of asking for measurable performance criteria. Meanwhile, the coaching plan milestones became increasingly absurd. Submit weekly reflections on adaptive leadership growth. What was I, a sixth grader at corporate summer camp? I submitted the reflections anyway, each one a masterpiece of weaponized corporate speak. This week reinforced that listening enhances communication effectiveness. Change creates discomfort, but growth requires discomfort. Fortune cookie wisdom that said absolutely nothing while checking all their boxes. All the while, I watched, observed, cataloged. Noticed how Michelle flinched every time Brandon joined video calls. Noticed how two other senior staff members, both over 45, had quietly disappeared from the org chart. No farewell emails, no LinkedIn announcements. Just gone. Dennis Murphy from procurement, 15 years experience with military suppliers. Scott Williams from logistics, former Army sergeant who understood supply chain security protocols. I added their names to my timeline. They thought I was passive, compliant, a relic waiting for retirement. What they didn't know is that quiet doesn't mean weak. It means observant. And observant veterans make excellent strategic planners. The urgent compliance meeting dropped on my calendar like a grenade. No agenda, no preparation time, just Michelle's ping with required attendance. 10 a.m. today. The kind of meeting that smells like smoke before you open. The conference room door. Brandon sat at the head of the table like a judge at a rigged trial. Michelle beside him, eyes already apologetic. Some HR director I'd barely met sat across from me, smiling like a dentist before drilling without Novocaine. "Russell," the director began, voice smooth as corporate honey. "We've received concerning reports about inappropriate workplace conduct." She slid a folder across the table. Inside, a grainy security camera photo showing me in the break room, reading highlighted legal documents during my lunch break. I recognized them immediately. My contract clauses, the arbitration provisions, my annotated copy of the termination language. I didn't flinch. Michelle cleared her throat. "These materials aren't work-related. This represents misuse of company time and resources." Brandon leaned forward, trying to project authority like cheap cologne. "It's also concerning, Russell. Reading legal documents during work hours isn't curiosity. It's defiance." He said defiance, like it was treason. Like I'd smuggled state secrets in a lunchbox. I looked at the photo again. That frozen moment of me with pen in hand, head tilted in concentration. It didn't look rebellious. It looked prepared. Maybe that's what scared them most. I closed the folder, set it aside. "Guilty," I said. Michelle blinked. "Excuse me?" I said guilty. I read legal documents during lunch, printed them at home, brought them in on my own time. But sure, let's call it defiance. Brandon sat back, surprised. He'd expected denial, maybe begging, perhaps a tearful apology to stuff in the non-compliant employee file. Instead, he got calm acknowledgement. "Are you admitting to misconduct?" the HR director asked, pen poised like she'd just won the lottery. "I'm admitting to knowing my rights." Silence filled the room. "This could escalate, Russell," Brandon warned. "Already has," I said, standing. "You just haven't felt it yet." I walked out without being dismissed. Back at my desk, I opened personal email and drafted one line to Patricia. Meeting complete. Photo evidence presented. Escalation threatened. Confirm arbitration timeline activation. Sent. Then I logged into our document system and quietly downloaded the coaching plan they'd shoved at me, highlighted the word collaborative where they'd used it 7 times like a corporate prayer. Patricia's response came 5 minutes later. Arbitration initiated. All communications now formal. Don't respond to anything without approval. I smiled. Brandon wanted a power play. He got legal process. Cold, methodical, relentless. The kind of thing you can't charm or intimidate your way out of. Wednesday morning, walking back from a meeting where Brandon announced transparency as our new core metric, I noticed Kevin Park trailing a bit too close in the hallway. Young HR associate, maybe 27, always moving like someone was about to catch him doing something wrong. "Hey," he whispered, glancing around like we were in a spy movie. "Got a minute?" We ducked into the maintenance alcove where the motion sensors flicker and Wi-Fi dies. He kept his voice low. "Checked your file," he said. "That contract clause? It's real and it's active." I didn't blink. "They're freaking out," he continued. "Michelle's had 4 closed-door calls with legal today. Brandon tried to get your personnel record updated." Compliance said absolutely not. He paused. "I probably shouldn't tell you this." "You didn't," I said. "This conversation never happened." He nodded and disappeared down the hall. I returned to my desk, appearing calm, except calm was ending for them. By lunch, the atmospheric pressure had shifted. Slack channels went quiet. Meetings got canceled. Through the glass conference wall, I could see Brandon pacing the balcony, gesturing like he was fighting invisible enemies. At 2:43 p.m., an emergency all-hands meeting invite appeared. No agenda, no context, just required. All staff. Everyone joined with cameras on per Brandon's standing order. Mine stayed off. I just watched. Brandon entered late, hair less perfect, jaw clenched tight enough to crack molars. "I want to address recent concerns," he began. "There's been noise, rumors, legal complications. Let me be clear. We're a team. Loyalty matters here." His voice cracked slightly on loyalty. He leaned closer to his camera. "And if you're more focused on loopholes and legal language than actually working," he sneered, "maybe this isn't your place. We build things here. We move forward. We don't hide behind paperwork." Paperwork. He said it like profanity. "Any questions?" Eyes scanning the grid of faces. Silence. I sat motionless, camera off, sipping coffee. People like Brandon think volume equals power. Real power is quiet. Quiet like arbitration clauses. Quiet like penalty fees, ticking up hourly. At 4:17 p.m., Patricia forwarded a message from their outside legal team. "We'd appreciate clarity on your client's expectations under Section 8B, particularly regarding procedural delays and potential financial exposure. Seeking amicable resolution options." Translation: "We stepped in it deep, and now we want to cap the damage without triggering more landmines." Patricia's response was surgical. My client's expectations are simple. Follow the contract. All provisions. She attached the penalty clause calculation showing daily accumulation already approaching 6 figures. After that call, Brandon vanished. Not metaphorically, literally. No Slack activity. No office appearances. Word was personal emergency. Others said working remotely, indefinitely. I didn't care about his location. I was watching the countdown. Arbitration clock ticking, emails archiving, HR scrambling. The voluntary separation agreement hit my inbox at 7:15 a.m. on Saturday. No pleasantries, just a cold PDF labeled Exit Package RP Final.pdf. 2 pages, no severance mention, no arbitration acknowledgement, just neat language stating that in exchange for my signature, all parties would be released from further obligation. They even offered to let me keep my laptop as a courtesy, as if that ancient ThinkPad was a consolation prize instead of a glorified space heater with a keyboard. The email timestamp was 7:02 a.m., meaning someone had lost sleep over this, or legal was pulling weekend shifts. Either way, it confirmed what I knew. They were scrambling. I didn't reply immediately. First, I opened a new spreadsheet. Escalation timeline. Brandon era. If they wanted to document patterns of behavior, they were about to get one with timestamps, witnesses, and cross-referenced evidence. Line by line, I logged everything. Week 1. Brandon arrives, calls experienced staff process debt. Week 3. Removes Russell from defense contracts without notice. Week 5. Coaching plan initiated for collaboration issues. Week 7. Confrontation over legal document reading. Week 8. Voluntary exit offered with 0 severance, each entry backed with files, screenshots, Slack transcripts, even casual comments like Brandon saying in a meeting, "Sometimes legacy systems have to die for innovation to live." Everyone laughed. I didn't, because I was the legacy system, and I'd just grown teeth. I forwarded the separation agreement to Patricia with one line. Decline. Proceed per contract Section 8B. Activate arbitration protocol. Her reply. Confirmed. Formal demand letter hand-delivered to corporate Monday by noon. Penalty clock starts at delivery. They'll blink first. The termination notice landed like a brick in concrete. Subject, Notice of Employment Termination. Performance Review Findings. No warning call, no human voice, just 6 paragraphs of euphemistic poetry. Despite extensive support efforts, continued misalignment with core organizational values, persistent resistance to collaborative feedback culture. Feedback culture. Sweet mercy. No severance package. No appeal process. Just a line reading. System access terminates 5:00 p.m. today. They thought they'd buried me. I clicked print, walked that paper to my kitchen counter, where Patricia's prepared arbitration demand waited in a FedEx envelope, slid the termination notice inside like the final puzzle piece. Section 8B, line 12 of my contract. Termination without cause under fabricated performance pretenses, attempting to circumvent severance obligations, immediately triggers binding arbitration with financial penalties equivalent to employees' average annual compensation multiplied by 2.1, assessed daily during non-compliance period. I signed my name across the demand letter with smooth, steady strokes. No shaking, no hesitation. Righteous clarity. At 11:20 a.m., Patricia emailed the formal arbitration demand to their legal team with timestamp, read receipt, penalty clause copied in bold 16-point font. Daily cost, $2,007. Tick. By 12:30 p.m., HR went dark. No Slack messages, no follow-ups, no sorry to see you go from Michelle. Just silence like someone had pulled the fire alarm and forgotten the reset code. The HR director's LinkedIn activity, previously a stream of posts about corporate empathy, went dead. Her out-of-office auto-reply activated 3 days early. By 2:15 p.m., external legal took over. Terse email to Patricia's inbox. Regarding arbitration filing, seeking mutually beneficial resolution discussion, they attached internal severance frameworks, requested call at earliest convenience. Translation: we know we're bleeding. How much to stop the hemorrhage? Patricia didn't call back. She waited. Because we weren't bluffing. The clause was legitimate, the documentation real, the coaching plan fabricated, the project theft documented, all time-stamped and stored in multiple encrypted locations. The silence hit like a power outage. One day, I was a problem they were scrubbing from the system. The next, I'd never existed. No retaliation, no legal threats, no more coaching plans. Just quiet, the kind that doesn't bring peace, only tension, like moments before dam failure. Leadership vanished. Michelle called in, sick, 4 straight days. Someone whispered the CFO had canceled his Aspen trip. The loudest sound came at 2:33 a.m. when my phone buzzed. Unfamiliar email address. Subject processing notice. Financial resolution. Mr. Patterson. Documentation review complete. Official processing confirmation by noon tomorrow. Apologize for delays. N. Parker, CFO office. No corporate speak about values or resilience. Just the tone of someone told to handle this immediately before it got worse. At 11:32 a.m., I logged into my bank account. There it was. $385,000, labeled Confidential Employment Settlement. Final. No apology, no memo, just numbers. The kind that don't change your soul, but make walking away considerably easier. I stared at the screen for a full minute without blinking or breathing. Then I exhaled. Finally. Patricia's legal memo arrived minutes later, marked Confidential, High-Risk Precedent. 4 pages confirming arbitration avoidance in the interest of reputational integrity. References to similar cases being managed discreetly. Final footnote. No admission of wrongdoing implied or acknowledged. Of course not. That would require integrity, shame, or both. I didn't need apologies. The payout was acknowledgement. Monday morning, Brandon walked into the office with his usual swagger, fresh blazer, reusable coffee cup, sunglasses tucked like punctuation marks. Except this time, usual greetings didn't follow. Just thick, woolly quiet. His smile faltered, hitting the war room. Empty. Not metaphorically, literally half the chairs missing, whiteboard wiped clean, sticky note on glass reading, transitioning. He spun toward the product team area. Gone. Jennifer's desk cleared, junior analyst's chair vacant. New strategy guy left his badge with a 1-word exit memo. Nope. Because here's what happens when you rip out a department's spine and try replacing it with ego and LinkedIn buzzwords. Things stop standing up. I told exactly nobody I was leaving. No farewell email, no nostalgic LinkedIn essay. Friday at 5:20 p.m. I walked out with a small cardboard box, my contract in one hand, dignity in the other. Then came the email hitting every company inbox like a siren. External audit request, comprehensive severance records review. From third-party labor law firm, CC'd to compliance, review at federallaborwatch.gov. Not just about me anymore. About every person they'd quietly pushed out, bought off, or shoved into early retirement. The ones who didn't fight, didn't know how, never thought they could. Thanks to that dusty clause they'd overlooked, the board was about to discover what silence really cost. Sometimes the most devastating victories are the ones where you never raise your voice. I learned that the hard way and taught them the same lesson for $385,000. Here's the real insight that took me 18 years to understand. They don't fire you because you're incompetent. They fire you because you remember when they were. And sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad. It's getting paid while they learn the difference between disruption and destruction.